Welcome to the Landscaping Podcast. My name is Joel Barnett and I'm your host. And today's episode is the 32nd of the Instagram lives that we've done. And it's on a Monday again because we didn't get it done last night. So that's that. And this week's episode is with Tim White from Cascade Landscapes. And it's a great chat. And it was one I was just interested in because I was after talking, while I was talking to him, I was realizing that some people are just made for business. And I think Tim is one of them. So other people just sort of fall into it. But yeah, it seems like he's a natural at it. So that's a good chat and plenty to take away from that one. G'day, Wazza. So the first question is from Timeless Landscaping Projects. And Cam said, what's your tool of choice for cutting artificial turf? Is there any tool even close to a steak knife? So I have a tool which we've used since I was an employee, and it's one of the great ones. And I've always got it in my pants pocket, and that is a Unipro Stanley knife or utility knife, because Stanley's a brand, but it's like, I think it might cost $3 or maybe $4 at the most, and you can get a pack of 5 replacement blades for about $5 as well. So it's super basic and cheap, but it's extremely sharp and awesome for cutting anything that you need to with a Stanley knife. So that's what we use for cutting fake grass. Haven't used a steak knife, but we did used to use that back in the day on real turf when we were cutting that in. But now we use like a plasterer's, I think it's a jab knife or something like that, that's used for cutting plaster. So that's what we use for cutting curves or short bits into the real turf. But yeah, it's just an orange Unipro Stanley knife. Just get them from Bunnings, and they're like $4. So that's the best tool for that. Ainsley 490 said, how do you ensure pavers don't crack when fill is in the soil under the paving slab? That is a great question, because there's not a lot you can do, especially in new developments, because we've seen it happen a bit, mainly in easements. There's been a lot of dropping in the soil after we've been there. So with your under your concrete paving slab, you should be putting in crushed rock and compacting that. I know overseas they put a lot more, and in Australia in commercial situations they put a lot more thought into the actual amount of the density that it's compacted to, and there's certain readings on some of the vibrating plates that it'll tell you when it achieves the right density of compaction. But yeah, you're only compacting 150 mil at most at a time. So if the soil 600 mil down hasn't been compacted properly prior to you starting there's not much you can do about it. So that's why you want to have enough of a thicker steel in the concrete, and have your concrete thick enough so that if, like for example, the middle of the soil in the middle drops, hopefully that the rest of that's all going to be supported, because you've got concrete there and thick enough steel, and your concrete's thick enough. Putting in expansion joints where they need to go in, so that with the expansion contraction that there's enough for that to move around. But yeah, it's a tricky one. We've never had any issues with it, other than in garden beds dropping, and that's also a bit to do with water. So the water gradually gets down into it and takes out the air and washes down the soil. So that's why it's more likely to drop in a garden bed where there's a lot more water in there. But there shouldn't be any water getting underneath the paving slab. So hopefully once you put the concrete in and the pavers in and get them all grouted and sealed, then no water's getting underneath there. Tim from Cascade Landscape says, is it better to collaborate with builders or designers? Also a great question. And if I had to pick only one, it would be designers, purely because they're going to have a lot more, they get a lot more work. So they do a lot more projects, because it's a lot easier to, like, it takes long enough for a landscaping project to be built, let alone a builder to do one. So they're obviously taking a lot longer and doing less projects a year. They could do maybe 3 or 4 projects a year, whereas a designer could do, depending how big their team is, they could do 50 a year. And also they're thinking like a builder is your sort of secondary to their needs. So sometimes they'll do jobs where they just build the house and that's all they care about, and the client can sort out the landscaping themselves. But a landscaper is purely thinking about a landscape designer or an architect is purely thinking about they want their project to be built to how their vision is. So they're obviously going to be a lot more involved in wanting to get someone good to build their project. So definitely, if you're wanting to choose one or the other, I would choose a designer to work for. And you seem, in my experience, you have less issues with designers as well, because builders, again, it's mainly because on their sites they've got their own priorities. So some builders we've worked for in the past, them and their trades, they just all care about themselves and getting their job done. But I suppose you're not having that with the designer because they're not on site anywhere near as much. But the key is when you find a good builder, like we've got a few that we work for, they're just chalk and cheese with compared to the bad ones. Like they're amazing to work with, the ones that we work with, and everyone sort of looks after each other, and they don't. If they know that something they're going to do is going to have a negative effect on us, they'll contact us first so that we can do our stuff, or they won't do it until we've done our thing. So, when you find a good builder to work for, they're just as good as a good designer, but they don't have as much work coming in. Benita Denia said, "What are some pet-friendly plants, especially for cats?" I'm not too sure on that answer, unfortunately. So I don't know off the top of my head or just naturally. So I just end up Googling it. So that's my only advice with that, which is not a great answer. But we haven't had any requests in the past to have the plants specifically pet friendly. Like there's ones, there's things like euphorbias and like oleanders, things that I know of that are poisonous and not good for animals. But yeah, I don't know how often animals go in and just start eating the plants. But it is something you need to keep an eye on when you're doing designs. But yeah, I think it's easier to find ones that aren't pet friendly than are. Yeah, but there's a lot, so it's a tricky one to answer. Mark from Growman's Coaching said, "As a new pool builder, what are the top 3 things I can do to work together with the landscaper?" So Mark is a landscaper, or certainly has been, if he's not doing it anymore. So he's certainly a good person to be in that situation to know. So if you're, it's like when a landscaper becomes a designer, it's good to get their designs usually because they can sort of see it from your point of view if you're a landscaper. But the number one thing for any team, whether that's a landscaper and pool builder or landscape and designer or garden maintenance person and designer, the number one thing to work together is communication. So, and the same with the clients as well. So the pool builder can communicate with when they're going to be doing the pool so that you can plan your job around it. We can work on making sure that the landscaper or designer is happy with the position of the pool exactly. So you might want to move it a couple of hundred mil so that you got full pavers, or so it lines up with something else that the pool builder didn't think about. And so it's a big collaboration between usually the 3 people, possibly 4. So you got the pool builder, designer, landscaper, and garden maintenance people. Everyone just get involved, and if they've got something to say, they can say it. If not, at least you've got them there. And because I've gone to appointments where I thought it was a waste of time, and there was no reason for me to be there, but then it turned out it was a good idea. It was good that I was there because I said, one thing that changed something. So you're better off to go to meetings like that sometimes than not. And an example of that could be like, I'm pretty sure it was Cam from Abcam who said that you've got you don't want to have a 400 mil pool beam and then have to have a 4 meter high hedge against it because you've got nowhere to put the ladder. So just little things like that the other 3 people might not have thought of. So it's good to have a lot of people involved, but then sometimes that can be too many people. So it's just swings around about. Sometimes it's good to have everyone, and sometimes it's not. But it's usually better off that. As annoying as it can be, it's usually better off to have too many people to talk to about the project. So I think up 2 more things. Two more things that I can do to work together with a landscaper. Communication would be number one. Not consistency, but basically just sort of doing what you say you're going to do. So if you say you're going to do something, do it. And if not, let's say you're going to say I'll start that again. Let's say you were going to have the pool all formed up on a particular date, so that then a landscaper could do something or whatever. If you're not going to have that done, you want to let them know. So again, it's communication, but you just sort of need to do what you say you were going to do, so that everyone can continue either on their schedule or change it if need be. The third one, no, I can't think of a third one. So we'll go to the next question, which is from Tom Lynch. And he said, what's your dream work vehicle and setup? Dream work vehicle, I do like I've got a Ford Falcon Ute, which I do like because it's got a tray, but they don't make them anymore. But it's getting a bit old in the tooth, so I'm going to have to look at something else. But I'm not too big on cars, but I do like some of the tool trailers I see in the US and Canada, where they're almost like a massive horse float, but you could actually have all your tools in there, and they have them on sort of both walls, and you can walk up the middle. So then you can put in like your whacker in there as well, or a presser. So they're massive, but they've got everything, and you can go in there and do work in there as well. So it would be nice to have one of them, but it'd be a bit of a pain to have to cart around everywhere, particularly if you need to unhook the ute from it in any situation. But yeah, wouldn't mind having a massive trailer, like a walk-in trailer, that you can have all your tools in up on the walls. But yeah, they'd weigh a fair bit too. So you need a pretty powerful ute to be transporting that around. But yeah, that would be in an ideal world. Cam from Abcam Horticulture said, is the landscape industry unique in terms of people sharing their ideas and insights with rival businesses? And if so, why do you think that is? Do you think it's pride in the industry and a rising tide raises all ships mentality? So I don't think it is all that unique, because I reckon, I've seen plumbing podcasts and electrical podcasts, so they're sort of doing the same thing as what I'm doing. But I've seen that they exist, but I don't listen to them, so I can't say, for example. But I think, and what I said to Cam was, it is an awesome industry, but there's also bad people in the industry, and there's also people who think that they've got secrets, so they don't want to share it with anyone. So I think it'd be interesting to see what it would be like if there wasn't as much work around as well, where there'd be people who are happy to share, their secrets and knowledge, but you'd wonder if that was the case if it was quiet and everyone was sort of struggling for work, and then it was a bit more competitive. But there'd certainly be people who still would be doing that regardless. So yeah, like any industry, there's good people and bad people in it. But I certainly don't think it's unique to landscaping, even though landscaping is obviously the best industry that exists. And Devolution Landscape said, greener landscapes have an awesome setup like that. So I would like to, I'll have to check that out. Because I know that there's been a few content creators in the US who did do like shop tours. So they go around and check out people's setups and their sheds. I won't be doing that, but it'd just be fascinating to see what different people have. So yeah, possibly that might be a good idea. If you stop doing the Q&As, I can do one of them every second week, sort of talking to someone about what's involved in their setup. Next question is from Anonymous saying, have you been asked by landscape designers or architects to include a percentage of the project price for them as payment for them to manage the project? It does ring a bell. I don't know if it must have been in the first time I had install, I reckon. And I don't know if I said no or if I just included whatever amount they wanted in the quote, and then it was too expensive for the client, so they didn't go ahead with it. So I've been asked, but I can't remember what the outcome was, and I know we didn't do the job, and wouldn't have a clue who the designer was either. So it has happened, but if it happened now, I would say no, because if a designer wants to manage a project and get paid for it, then that's something they need to organise with the client. not doing it sort of in a backhand kind of way. And from my experience when I was working at the bank, I was working in some home loans. I only ended up doing one home loan, but I did learn a lot about it. But if you're using a broker, the broker has to make it known to the client how much of a, I've forgotten the word, how much money they're getting paid there for the referral. There is a word for it, but I can't think of it. So if the broker is getting paid by the bank for the broker to recommend a home loan, the client knows how much the broker is getting paid. So it'd be the same thing, I'd say, legally. If a designer is getting paid by the landscaper, the client should have to know how much they're getting paid. So yeah, it's a real grey area. So yeah, I wouldn't do it, and I wouldn't recommend anyone does it. If you're a designer and you're wanting to do that, you're better off just speaking to the client, and if they don't want to go ahead with it, then that's what it is. And if you want to have more involvement in the project, but the clients are saying no, then you could increase your prices to include that. But yeah, that's the only way to go about it, or don't charge for it, and then you work out if you actually do want to have, how badly you want to have involvement in it. Rich Earth Landscape said, "Are you a fan of alternate decking products, so composite or aluminium?" Not a fan of it. Like, we've only used it once or twice, definitely twice I can think of, but both were clients' requests, and yeah, I don't know. It's not a big fan of it, but I don't dislike it. But I just prefer timber. Like, the last deck we did was 135 by 32 mil spotted gum decking, and it's just a beautiful timber, just so thick, and it's like when you walk on it, it's really solid, like more so than 20 mil decking board. So yeah, it's just a beautiful product, and I just like the natural timber better, and I'm happy for it to let it go grey as well. But I appreciate there is maintenance involved with it. So like at my current house, I'm going to be doing paving because I don't want to have to maintain a deck. Even if it's going to go grey, you still want to oil it every now and then. So yeah, not a big fan of them, but it's just, not a product I use. I've seen, like, I do like some of the colors that they have, and I've seen there's like a really white aluminium, I think it is. Could have been, it might even be a cement type of product, because I think it's James Hardy do it. But no experience with it, so couldn't say whether it's good or bad or scratches. But yeah, just not a fan. But I think they've definitely got a place and a use. BL Landscaping said, "What's your go-to method for laying recycled red brick paving? Flexible base or a mortar base?" No, that is a great question, because a lot of the times, like 99% of the time, we'll do paving on a mortar base. But if I was doing flexible red brick paving, it'd be on a flexible base. I don't know why that is, but I just think that it's just the appropriate way to do it. And we've done a lot, or not a lot, but we did a fair bit in the early days when I was an employee. And I've been back to those projects and it hasn't moved. So there's no point going to the effort of laying each brick individually on a mortar base after doing the concrete base and then grouting it all, if you can do it quicker and cheaper and you get that same end result. Probably even, it's not the same, it's actually more flexible, not only in terms of being on a crushed rock and sand base, which is what flexible means in terms of paving, but if you ever need to dig across the driveway or whatever the paving is, you can just lift up some of the pavers and then relay them. So there's also that benefit to it. But yeah, I don't know if it's because they're smaller and thick that it's a better option to go with, but definitely do. If I was doing flexible paving, even at my own house, if I was doing red brick paving, you'd do it on a flexible base. Adam Brettel said, "When do you need to pave on a slab?" It's crazy how many coincidences happen. Like, I've seen a question in the question box for a few minutes, and I decided to click on it now, and it's coincidentally it was when do you need to pave on a slab compared to road-based sand, cement, etc. So that it's when you need to. A lot depends on the paver. So if you're using a paver that has variances in thicknesses, so it might be, one of the things can be like that. One paver might be 20 mil, one paver might be 15 mil, one might be 25. So there's that. That's annoying if you have to lay it on sand. So you don't have to do that. So you'd want to lay that on a mortar base. But the worst ones are when the paver varies from 20 to 15 mil over an edge of the paver. So it's not perfectly rectangular. It's sort of would slope if you put it down. So they're even worse. So that's when a mortar base is better. It's going to be stronger as well as being easier to lay. And also if the pavers are large, so because if you're laying on a flexible base, you need to run your compaction plate over it. And if the whacker is too small compared to the size of the paver, then you can get a bit of cracking going on there, because they just want to compact that so that it embeds the pavers into the sand a bit more and vibrates it so that the sand drops in between the pavers. So yeah, I wouldn't go anything bigger than 400 by 400. I would lay on mortar, because you wouldn't want to run a whacker over that. And that's not any standards or anything. That's just my opinion. But 99% of the paving we do is on mortar. In saying that, we might have one coming up that's going to be, it could be old school 300 by 300s on a crush rock and sand base because of the budget, and we're just trying to squeeze in a project because all our other ones are getting pushed back. So sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And which question was I up to? Hazza004 said, "What's your thoughts on getting along with other landscapers? For example, waving/chatting." So I'm obviously pretty big on that. Like I love waving to all the other landscapers around Geelong, but a lot of the time I'll be looking at you'll see a truck or you coming towards you, and I'll be looking at it, and I don't know if I've got bad eyesight, but I don't see the logo until it's too late, and then I might have my glasses on, so that it looks like I'm just staring at them. And if they wave at me, I wave after I've driven past them when I realise who it was. So I'm not very good at recognising vehicles or logos until it's too late. And my employees drive past me, and I don't recognise them when they're in their own vehicles. So I'm real bad at recognising cars. So I do like to wave and have a chat to other landscapers and say hello when I see them at the soil yard or wherever. But if I have stared at someone and you wave and I haven't waved back, it's just because I'm not looking or haven't seen you. So I do apologise for that. But yeah, just be a nice person, and good things happen to good people. So I'm all for it. Aaron Bear Jarvis said, "Are there any books you have found helpful for design/construction/business?" I used to love reading books like not so much, nothing to do with business, but I used to love reading when I was at school. And if anyone asks what my favorite, fiction book is, it was the Tomorrow When the War Began series by John Marsden. So it's probably better for kids, I suppose, because I was in school when I read it, but it was a great series of books. So I used to love reading. And then I don't know when it happened, but I got to an age and I can't read without falling asleep. So I've got the books sitting on my chest, and my eyes are kind of half down because they're looking half closed because they're looking down anyway. And then I end up just falling asleep. So I don't do much reading. And I haven't done any books on design, construction, or business. It's all just podcasts. So I can't even think of off the top of my head the podcast to listen to, because there's so many different ones. And I don't always listen to every episode either, so you like to mix up a bit so you're not hearing the same voices all the time. Literally the only book I use is the timber framing one, and every now and then I'll use the like the Domestic Building Contracts Act in 1995 and exciting ones like that when I have to look up something. So yeah, it's all just technical stuff that I look up in books is the ones I've got. Dan from Evergrow Landscape said, any advice on successfully scaling up the business, more employees, moving off the tools and focusing on running the business, etc.? That is a ripper question. And the best thing that you could be doing about that is getting advice on it. So that's a good start doing that. And also it seems like you've already got the knowledge of if you're wanting to have more employees, or if you're wanting to move off the tool, you'll have to have more employees to support your wage. But it will depend on what you're best at, because some people like myself, if I was going to scale up the business, I would be in a better place to actually get someone else to partially run the business and do the offsite type of stuff, because I enjoy and I'm fast at doing stuff on site. So, and that's what I love doing. So you want to do what you do enjoy the most and try and employ someone else to do the other stuff that you need to do. So work out what your favorite part to do is and what you're best at, and do that and get other people to do the other things. And then, but like eventually, obviously, I would need to, and you might need to get off the tools eventually. But for as long as I would work on the tools. But that is almost the perfect question for the answer to be get a business coach. So, find someone who has ideally done that, like scaled the business up. So they've made the mistakes already, so they know what to do. Or look at a business that is the size that you want to get to. And because they'll have done the same thing. They'll have worked out things to do and things not to do, and hopefully they'll be able to give you advice. And you should pay for their advice because they'll be saving you money by telling you mistakes that they've made. So it's pretty valuable getting advice from someone who's actually done it. So not from me, because I haven't done it. I'm just thinking what might work. But if you can find someone who has done it before, that's going to be the best way to go. So yeah, either a business coach or a mentor or someone who's done it. That would be the best way to do it. Well, it sounds like you're already on the right path. I just had a question from Devolution Landscape saying, do you do your own irrigation designs? I reckon 75% of the time we do. Every now and then we'll get a design that the designer has done the irrigation design, but we never use an irrigation supplier for the designs. It's one of those things. You probably should use them, because they're gonna it's gonna be a lot more precise. And obviously, there's people who do their own landscapes when there's professional landscapers who could do it. So you're going to get a better product if you get a professional to do it. But you've got to draw the line somewhere, and some things do fine without having to get a professional in. So we have managed fine so far and never had any issues. I don't get them designed, and don't plan on doing that in the future either. Andrew Rave said, do you recommend the use of a laser level for an amateur landscaper to get correct heights of paving and lawn? I reckon that is a good idea, because it does take a bit of time to get your eye in and be able to view, whether the heights are right or not. But if you're not going to use a laser level, I've said it a few times to my guys that one of the most underrated tools that a landscaper can have is a string line. So you can get your paving and lawn heights good with just a string line. So it's a hell of a lot less expensive than a laser level. But yeah, the amount of times we should have had a string line out a lot earlier than what we do, because eventually you realize you've gone a bit out somewhere, and then you get string line out and think, oh yeah, it's way out. So you could have just had that string line out earlier, and just would have saved a lot of time. So probably costs $5 to buy a string line. It's a 50-meter long line, and that's going to get you straight lines and good heights. But it's in the early days when you're learning about landscaping, a laser level is good to give the heights. And also it also helps you think about the way different things relate to different heights. It's even not a bad idea to take one out when doing quotes, so that you're not going to get yourself into trouble where like you should have had a step in somewhere, but you didn't think it was going to be high enough, or rather than just getting down on the ground with your tape measure up in the air and trying to work out what height something is. You can actually have your laser level there and work it out precisely. So, and that gives the client a bit more of a bit more confidence in that you know what you're doing. They might get two people out there, and you're going to rock up with your laser level, and now the guy just rocks up and he's sort of just eyeing a tape measure up, and that person is me who's just eyeing a tape measure up. But eventually you'll get better at viewing things like that. But in the meantime, it's never a bad idea to have a laser level. And like, it doesn't need to be that precise either. Like there's some that are thousands of dollars to buy, but for what we're doing in landscaping, they don't need to be that fancy. So you can get one for $500 that does the exact same thing. It might be 0.1 of a millimeter out over, like 0.1 of a millimeter per millimeter out compared to the expensive one, but it's over 10 meters. It's going to be 1 millimeter. That's not a problem. So you don't need to go too crazy getting an expensive laser level, but it is a great thing to have. Davo27 said, how do you feel about your employees doing weekend work while employed by you Monday to Friday? I don't have a problem with it at all. So I've had my guys use not just my utes and tools, but they'll take the ute and the tool trailer. So exactly like we have it during the week. And yeah, it doesn't bother me one bit. Just because they're not stealing money from me or work from me. So it's usually for mates or friends of friends that they're working for. It's a great way to have extra income for them. Obviously, they've got an ABN and claiming everything on tax and doing it properly. But yeah, there have been annoying times, like they'll bring like just a couple of weeks ago, they brought the power broom back saying the power broom wasn't working. So then I had to fix it on the Monday. So there are annoying things that happen like that, but yeah, it's not the end of the world. And yeah, so there's things that get used, but the same deal. Like one of my guys had his car written off, so it wasn't written off, but it took 12 weeks to fix it. So he was just using a work vehicle in the meantime. So I'm happy to use whatever they want on weekends. Just let me know beforehand. Like it could be one of those things. If something ever went wrong, then that could be one of those things that one thing ruins it for everyone. So then we might not do it if that was to happen. But luckily that hasn't happened. So, and I think it's also a good thing for them to do projects for themselves, because then I'm not there telling them what to do. So then they start thinking of things and how to do them. So there's a lot more independence for them in doing that. So that can help your business as well. So if there's no one telling them to do things, then they have to think of it themselves. So then that can help, build their skills. So there's benefits for the business as well to let that happen. Christopher Zuber said, best technique for installation of Corten steel edging / retaining walls. So when we're doing steel edging, we use just mild steel, like 5mm thick, 75 by 5mm mild steel. And we put 12mm steel in and just weld it to it. So that's just for the edging. And if we're doing retaining walls, like we've just done one that was, I think it was 1 meter or 800mm high. So we built a retaining wall like a normal one with treated pine posts and sleepers, because it was an existing wall. So we just rebuilt it as it was. And then we've got a piece of Corten steel bent, so it'll run up the face and across the top of that, and we'll just attach it to so just like it's cladding. So it's just 1.6mm because it's not structural. So we've done ones in the past that were maybe 300 or 400mm high, and we put in star pickets into the ground and then welded it to that. So it depends on the height, but in a perfect world, you'd build an independent retaining wall of it and attach it to that. So the retaining wall that's doing all the work isn't seen. Planet Space said, how do you reckon the Saints will go in the finals? So that's my AFL team, the St Kilda Football Club, made the finals this week, so they're playing in a couple of weeks. But everyone expected they were going to do terribly this year, so they've already exceeded expectations. So if they win one final, that'll be a huge success. If they lose, it'll be disappointing, but hopefully they go right. Nate Cullen said, I'm just about to start out by myself in the landscape industry. Do you have any advice for starting up a landscape business in the industry? Well, you're doing the right thing by listening to podcasts. So there's a lot of people sharing their ideas and advice. So yeah, just spend all your time listening to different, not just landscaping podcasts, but business ones. So you'll hear the way people have done things and how they started out and what they wish they did differently. So there's 140 episodes of this podcast that I would recommend going through, because you're not going to get something out of every episode, but there was a new business idea I thought of just last week, and I remembered listening to a podcast about it at least it was 2 years ago. So I went searching back and found it, and so when I was listening to it, I remember thinking, there's no way this is relevant to our industry, and then it turns out it is. So you're not going to get value out of every episode of every podcast, but the more you listen to, the more chance you got of finding some value. You're not going to get value out of listening to music or the radio, so you might as well have a crack at listening to podcasts. Davo's followed up on his questions about employees using the utes on weekends, saying you're happy to have your signage floating around if something was to go wrong. Again, it comes back to who you employ. Like my two guys, I know that there's nothing that they would ever do wrong. That I wouldn't do. Like I'm more likely to do something wrong than what they are. So, it would depend on who you have working for you, whether you're going to let them use it. And but I know they represent the business just as well, if not better than what I do. So, but it is a good point, because it is my logo that is getting seen. So, but luckily the ones I've got wouldn't have any problem. Andrew 388 said, "Are you making your own mix for your architectural concrete at your house?" I am doing that, and I regretted it as soon as I was doing the first step. So, because I did the letterbox, because they were small pools, there was only a few mixes in that. But then I don't know that there's a supplier in Geelong who has the whitewash sand that I used for it. So I was using a mix of 7mm screenings. So I did 3 buckets of that, 1.5 buckets of whitewash sand, and 1 bag of cement, which is also a bucket of cement. And because that was like a creamy mix, because that's what Ollie from Hungry Wolf used to use, because they've got some concrete suppliers that supply that in Melbourne where he was getting it from. But in Geelong, they just use the normal paving sand, which is like an orange one. So I didn't want to use that, even though I'm pretty sure it looks exactly the same. But so because I did the letterbox in that mix, I had to do the steps in that mix because I didn't want it to look any different. And then I put in, I think I did about 3.8 cubes of concrete over the 4 steps. So that's a lot of mixes. I did it over 4 days, but one of the two big ones were, I think, 15. No, not 15. One was 12 mixes. No, there might have been 15, I reckon. Yeah, way too many mixes. I was 5 mixes in, couldn't be bothered doing it anymore. I was mixing for like 2 hours. So wouldn't do that again. But that is what I did. And the last question for tonight is from Fig Landscapes. That's from Grant. And just before I read out the question, it's good seeing, just probably an hour ago, I reckon he did a post where he introduced himself on his Instagram page. So and I didn't know what he looked like because I hadn't seen him before. So and that's going to be helpful for future clients, I reckon, when they come across that. So it's a great thing to do for people to put themselves on their Instagram page so that it shows a face to the business and not just a mysterious account. So I reckon that was great by Grant. He said, "What are the biggest trends for the coming season?" So if I had to go off what was at the garden show this year, I reckon it's going to be more again, it's nothing new. Like other people have been doing it, but just the increased use of perennials in planting, I think that is going to be something that we'll see a lot more. And again, I've said it a few times. I see something for 5 years and think, oh, that's not a bad idea, and I'll jump on the bandwagon. And that's what's happening with the perennials. I'm starting to use them, even though people have been doing it for ages. But I've always admired the people who are doing them and thought how impressive it was to use them, rather than just doing the old mass planting of Lamandra tenica and Nandina domestica Moon Bay that I was using. So yeah, I'm increasing my knowledge, and it seems other people are as well. So I think just the increasing of plants in the landscape, I think is going to be one of the trends that's happening just recently and also in the future. So not so much hardscaping. I think it's going more towards the plants, which is a good thing. But that was the last question. So it was a long one today. We had 16 questions because I put 2 question boxes up over 2 days. So apologies for dragging it out, but there were some great questions in there, both submitted earlier and the live ones that came through as well. So thank you once again to everyone who submitted one. And yes, Tim from Cascade Landscapes is out this week, and it's a great chat. So we'll put up another question box in the next couple of days and do it all again next week.